Hello and welcome to Unacademy. On behalf of Unacademy, I wish you a happy Diwali. Unacademy has a Diwali gift to all the learners. Our Plus subscription till the Diwali ends is available at 17,999. Enjoy the festival of light, and fire your UPSC preparation with the Unacademy Plus subscription. Go to our website, take a look at various price options, various subscription plans, whether it is Plus or Iconic Pro or Platinum. Use this code IS English, and automatically it will unlock the lowest subscription fee for you. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper. These are the six topics that we shall be discussing today. The first up, in Doha, Pakistan and Afghanistan agree on ceasefire. First up, if you look at this line, this is the Durand line, which separates Pakistan from Afghanistan. This Durand line or this Durand line agreement was signed between British India and Afghanistan, which was then ruled by an Amir way back in 1893. Pakistan accepts and recognizes this line, but Afghanistan and successive governments in Afghanistan, including the Taliban when it was in power till 2001, they do not recognize this Durand line. They say it is a colonial imposition and we don't agree with this. That is one conflict between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Afghanistan, you would know, is a landlocked country. And this line, Durand line, separating, which is an international border between Pakistan and Afghanistan, although Pakistan accepts this, but Afghanistan rejects this. That's one issue. Issue number two, Afghanistan and Pakistan were once close, primarily because of Taliban. You would know that when 9/11 attacks took place, when airplanes were hijacked by the terrorists supported by Al Qaeda, masterminded by Al Qaeda. Two of these planes hit the World Trade Towers in New York. There was another plane which hit the Pentagon. And then there was one plane which, because of the resilience and resistance showed by the hostages inside the plane was shot down near Pennsylvania. Otherwise, it would have hit the White House. After that, United States launched its war on terror. United States said either you are with us or against us. You can't stay neutral. And then Pakistan was forced to also join this war on terror. And ultimately, the objective was that in Afghanistan, which was then controlled by Taliban, Taliban needs to be overthrown. Why? Because Taliban was giving sanction, was giving support, was giving logistical support, emotional support to Al Qaeda mastermind, Al Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden. United States wanted Taliban to hand over Osama bin Laden to United States, which they refused, and ultimately a war was imposed on Afghanistan. Taliban was defeated, went out of power, and then we also saw in 2011 how Al Qaeda chief Osama bin Laden was killed in Abbottabad, very close to the military establishment in Pakistan. So Afghanistan and Pakistan, they were closer to each other. And even when United States and NATO troops were stationed in Afghanistan, there was a civilian government in Afghanistan, but Taliban would be supported by Pakistan. And ultimately, what happened when United States withdrew in 2021? It was considered that it is not the Talibani takeover of Afghanistan. It is the takeover of Pakistan by Pakistan of Afghanistan, but with an Afghan face in the form of Taliban. But then in Pakistan, there is one faction of Taliban known as Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. Although it is a separate entity designated as a terrorist entity internationally, 2007, Faitullah Masood created Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. And their intention is to create an Islamic state in Pakistan. And the irony is, Pakistan itself is an Islamic state. But then the very rigid version of Islam is to be imposed in Pakistan, and that is the ideology of TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. They are also against the Hazaras, the minorities in Afghanistan. They are also against the Shias, and they have a very rigid interpretation of Islam, and they want to establish this Sharia in Pakistan. And throughout 2007 onwards, a lot of terror activities have been perpetrated by TTP on the Pakistani soil, particularly along the Afghanistan Pakistan border. And you would also know that in Balochistan province, Pakistan is facing another insurgency by the Baloch Liberation Army. They want to separate this resource rich Balochistan from Pakistan. So Pakistan has been facing some internal disturbances because of what is happening in Balochistan, because of the trouble along the Afghanistan Pakistan border, where Tehreek-e-Taliban of Pakistan wants to establish an Islamic State. And this TTP, it owes its allegiance to the Taliban in Afghanistan, also gets the support from the Al Qaeda, also gets the support from the Islamic State. And when Taliban came to power in Afghanistan after the United States left, Pakistan is accusing Afghanistan Taliban of not cutting its support to TTP. Long story short, there is Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, and then there is Taliban in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, Taliban is the ruling majority. In Pakistan, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan wants to overthrow the Pakistani state and wants to implement its own model of Sharia. This Afghan Taliban is accused by Pakistan of supporting the TTP, logistically supporting, emotionally supporting, financially supporting as well, and they are not cutting ties with the TTP. So when there is a surge in the terror activities in Pakistan on the Pakistani soil by the TTP, Pakistan is accusing Afghanistan of not doing enough to restrict the TTP. And that's what happened on October 9, 2025, this year, when Pakistan carried out airstrikes in Kabul as well, in Jalalabad as well, in various other places in Afghanistan. And then Afghanistan army also retaliated, hit various military outposts of Pakistan along this Pakistan Afghanistan border. And then this to and fro, back and forth kept on happening. And ultimately, in a peace talk brokered by Qatar as well as Turkey, both the sides, Pakistan as well as Afghanistan, they have agreed on a ceasefire. It is argued that Afghanistan has agreed that we will not further support the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. But whether this ceasefire will hold or not, we will have to wait and watch. The point is, it is no coincidence that on October 9, 2025, when Pakistan carried out airstrikes in the heart of Afghanistan, at the same time, the Talibani foreign minister Amir Khan Muntaki was in India. He was given a warm welcome in India. And you would also know a controversy when this foreign minister of Afghanistan, Talibani Afghanistan, when he wanted to address the press conference, the women reporters were excluded. They were not allowed entry. And later on, they called it some technical problem. And then women reporters were also allowed to interview, to ask questions to the foreign minister of Afghanistan's Taliban. But the point is, on one hand, Afghanistan, led by Taliban, is coming closer to India. Now we have elevated our relations to that of the embassy because there was no embassy in Afghanistan after the Taliban took over Afghanistan in 2021. There was no embassy, but now this diplomatic relations have been further strengthened between the two countries, India and Afghanistan, where we have elevated our diplomatic level with the Afghanistan in the form of an embassy. Pakistani defense minister is saying that Afghanistan is now a proxy of India. So this region is becoming very, very interesting, particularly for a civil services aspirant. So what is happening between Afghanistan and Pakistan, that has an important role to play for your examination because this is where the India element also comes into the picture. But if you look at Afghanistan, Afghanistan, you would know or you might have read, is known as the graveyard of empires. Why do we want to discuss this today? Because this is a modern geopolitical construct, graveyard of empires. What is called graveyard of empires and why Afghanistan is considered to be the graveyard of empires? It is argued that Afghanistan is not controlled by foreign powers forever. The resilience of the Afghans is such that these foreign powers they withdraw after some time. This happened in the 19th and 20th century with British. This happened between 1979 to 1989 with Soviet Union, and this happened between 2001 till 2021 with the United States of America. So Britain lost some Afghan wars and after that British left. Similarly, Soviet Union had controlled Afghanistan. But then it is argued that Pakistani ISI, along with the American CIA, they supported and funded the jihadis of Afghanistan, the Pashtuns of Afghanistan, to wage a war, a holy war, a jihad against the Soviet Union. And then Soviet Union also collapsed in the 1990s. And then we saw the American war on terror, where first they waged a war against Afghanistan to oust the Taliban. Then Osama bin Laden was also weakened and then finally captured and killed in 2011 at Abbottabad. And then United States also withdrew Afghanistan in 2021. So it is argued that this Afghanistan is a graveyard of empires where the mighty British Empire lost, where the mighty Soviet Union also lost, and mighty United States also lost. But this may not be completely true. Why? Because, as I told you, this graveyard of empires as a phrase is a modern geopolitical construct. Previously, Alexander and the Mongols they had ruled over Afghan territory for many years. So it is not that Afghanistan is a graveyard of empires that foreign powers cannot control Afghanistan. This may be true in the modern context, but not in the ancient construct, where the Mongols as well as the Alexander they ruled the Afghan territory. But be that as it may, the point is that Afghanistan, there used to be a great game, another phrase that you will frequently read in the newspapers. Great game. What is this great game? British was a colonizer and British had colonies in Asia. India was a colony. Soviet Union was also expanding its influence into the Central Asia. So now the position was that if there are two important powers, Soviet Union and Britain, Britain wants to ensure that its territory, its colonies in Asia are not affected by the Soviet influence. Soviet would also be worried whether the British territories and their influence will enter the Central Asia. That is how they created a buffer. British created a buffer in the form of Afghanistan. Afghanistan will be a buffer. If Afghanistan is breached, then Soviet Union will enter into India. So Afghanistan was part of this great game played between Soviet Union and British, where Afghanistan was used as an area by the British to ensure that Soviet does not enter India, and Afghanistan was also used as an area by the Soviet Union as a buffer so that British influence does not enter the Central Asia. Afghanistan that way is at a geographically important location, and that is why it becomes very important for the exam. Long story short, what has now happened is that there was a conflict between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Pakistan is accusing Afghanistani Taliban of supporting or at most not restricting the influence of TTP, Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, which is enacting a lot of terror activities on the Pakistani soil and wants to overthrow the Pakistani state. In response to that, Pakistan attacked Afghanistan. Afghanistan retaliated. So there was this conflict between the two countries. And now finally, we have a ceasefire, which is brokered by Qatar as well as Turkey. Whether this ceasefire will last or not, we have to wait and watch. But for your examination, you need to understand what is this Durand line. Pakistan respects this, but Afghanistan does not. Afghanistan says it is a colonial imposition. That is why successive Afghanistan governments, including the Taliban when it was ruling Afghanistan between 1996 to 2001, did not recognize Durand line. That's number one. Number two, what is this phrase called graveyard of empires? This may be true in the modern context because big empires such as the Britain, such as the Soviet Union, such as the United States, they bit the dust in Afghanistan. But it may not be true historically. Why? Because historically, Alexander, Mongols ruled and captured some areas of Afghanistan. Then what is this great game? A great game was being played between Soviet Union and Britain in Afghanistan so that Afghanistan acts like a buffer, so that British influence does not enter the Central Asia and Russian influence, Soviet Union influence does not enter the India. That's how Afghanistan, a landlocked country, is at a strategic location important for your exam. Let's look at another important article on page number 1 of today's The Hindu newspaper. As air turns toxic, the Chief Minister of Delhi is appealing for the use of green crackers only. But when we understand this topic from the civil services examination point of view, we can say that it is only a step. Using green crackers is only a step, it is not a solution. What are these green crackers? 7 years ago, two entities, government entities, CSIR, which is Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, and another entity known as NERI, National Environmental Engineering Research Institute. This is a governmental initiative. And to tell you, India has now become one of the few countries in the world where green crackers are being manufactured at the governmental level. So this is a governmental led initiative, something very important for your exam. CSIR and NERI together, they have decided to manufacture green crackers, or they have decided to uh, give wet the technology for green firecrackers. What does that mean? We use firecrackers, and you tell me in the comment section who was instrumental in introducing gunpowder in India. Gunpowder was invented in China, and it is considered to be one of the fourth inventions, big inventions of the world. Gunpowder was invented in China, but it was introduced in India. But who introduced it in India? Although you might have read in your books that it was Babur who introduced gunpowder in artillery in 1526 during the Battle of Panipat. But gunpowder was known in India even before that, during the Bahmani kingdom in Deccan. It was used previously as well. But at a massive level for the use in artillery, it was introduced by Babur in 1526. But the point is, why do we use firecrackers? Because of the flames, the lighting, also because of the loud bangs, sounds. How do these firecrackers, once they are bursted, how do they produce these flames? How do these firecrackers produce loud sounds? For that, chemicals are used, as simple as possible. Which are these chemicals which are used? For example, we use potassium nitrate, we use barium nitrate, aluminium, sulfur, charcoal, etc., etc. So it is this chemical composition of potassium nitrate, barium nitrate, aluminium, sulfur, charcoal, and once they are mixed, combustion takes place, and ultimately you see the flames, you see the big colors, and you see the loud bang sounds. Obviously, because of this, what will happen? Some of the particles would be released in the atmosphere, which will act as a pollutant as well, and which will also cause some bronchitis problems for the people, for the humans, particularly the children. Children are more vulnerable. For example, asthma, lungs, various other issues are being faced by the people, primarily because of this chemical composition. But now the point is, particulate matter 2.5 particulate matter 10, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, because the bursting of these firecrackers will emit particulate matter 2.5, particulate matter 10 will also emit sulfur dioxide, which is a pollutant, nitrogen oxide, which is a pollutant. And ultimately, what will also lead to it will lead to smog, smoke and fog put together, and it will cause a lot of ailments for the elderly, for the children, even for the healthy. And that is why we see the air quality index is worsening in Delhi day by day. If we want to ensure that the loud sounds produced by these firecrackers, it is reduced, because noise pollution is also an issue, and the pollution which is caused in the atmosphere, that is also an issue. So we have to tackle both. We have to limit the emit of these particulate matter, these pollutants, and at the same time reduce the sound, the decibel levels of these firecrackers. That's where the idea of green firecrackers comes into the picture, developed through the initiative by CSIR and NERI. What they basically do is that they ensure that we reduce the use of toxic metals, and we will add some additives to this chemical composition. First, we will reduce the usage of some toxic metals, we will eliminate them, and we will add some additives into this composition so that it reduces or suppresses dust, because dust has the potential of entering into the lungs of individuals, which will cause various problems. So that's the purpose of these green firecrackers. We will eliminate the use of toxic metals, and we will ensure that we will add some chemical compounds into these green firecrackers so that we can suppress the soot, suppress the dust. That's the purpose of these green firecrackers. That is why these green crackers are branded as SWAS, safe water releaser, or STAR, safe thermite cracker, and SAFAL, safe minimal aluminium. What they basically do, the barium nitrate that I told you, which is one of the chemical compounds used in firecrackers, because I told you potassium nitrate, barium nitrate, sulfur, these compounds, aluminium, charcoal is used. So we will eliminate the use of barium nitrate. And what we will replace it with? Potassium nitrate or strontium. These salts will be added. We will limit the aluminium content as well, and we will add some additives. We will add some compounds like zeolite, iron oxide, which will do what? Which will suppress the dust, which will capture the soot which is caused due to not proper combustion of these particles. So soot is released, that dark carbon content, blackened content. So we want to suppress the soot as well. That's the idea of these green crackers. So we will reduce the usage of toxic metals. We will add some compounds, additives, so that we can suppress the dust. For that, we use the zeolites, iron oxide. And because of these green firecrackers, NERI, National Environmental Engineering Research Institute, it conducted a survey in Delhi in 2019 and said, because of these green firecrackers, 30 to 40% lower PM and gas emissions have been reported compared to conventional firecrackers. So, conventional firecrackers, which will use potassium nitrate, which will use barium nitrate, instead of using them, if we use these compounds which are less toxic, which are with additives, compounds, some salt, so that we can capture the soot as well, 30 to 40% reduction in PM matter we see in the atmosphere. So pollution is less, but that does not mean pollution has been eradicated. There is still pollution. It's just that the toxicity level goes down. That is why we say it is cleaner, but not pollution free. When we eliminate barium nitrate, obviously it will have benefit, because barium compounds, they are responsible for the green flame that you will see, and they can cause lung concerns. They can affect your cardiovascular activity as well. So if we reduce their content or eliminate their content, scientists have reduced the barium load in airborne PM 2.5 and PM 10 by 30 to 60%. But at the same time, these scientists have found the traces of aluminium, copper, strontium particles because these are still present in the emissions. So, green firecrackers, the name once you hear, that does not mean we will resort to pollution free environment. It will still cause pollution, but of a lower standard as compared to the previously used traditional firecracker. That is why we say it is a good step, but it is not a solution. When we use green crackers, obviously the emission levels fall of the toxic metals. But some studies have shown that now ultra fine particles are released in the atmosphere. And which are these ultra fine particles? Less than 100 nanometers. These particles are not visible, but they are highly penetrative. They penetrate into your lungs, they penetrate into your vessels, and ultimately it will cause some asthma, bronchitis, and some diseases. These nanoparticles, because they are tiny, they travel deep into the lungs and the bloodstream. And because of that, there are serious health problems that children, that elderly, in fact, every individual faces. That is why the air considered in Delhi is unlivable. That is why people are moving out of Delhi as well because of the condition of the air. That is why we say all these green crackers, some of you might have bought these green crackers. You will see that there is a QR code, there is a logo of CSIR, NERI. Just like you have a GI tag, and whenever you buy a product which has a GI tag associated with it, you are assured that you are buying a genuine product. Similarly, when you buy a green cracker, you will see a logo, you will see a QR code, you will see the stamp of CSIR NERI, and you can be assured that this is a green cracker authorized by the government. But then we have also seen counterfeit. We have also seen pirated versions of green crackers, which are primarily toxic. Old conventional firecrackers, it's just that labeling is done that these are green crackers. So, what you are buying is not a green cracker, but a traditional firecracker in the name of a green cracker. Because systems' real world effectiveness has been challenged by the proliferation of counterfeit products. It makes it very difficult for consumers to guarantee that they are purchasing these low emission crackers. So, although you think you assume that you are buying a low emission cracker, a green cracker, but in reality, you are buying the same old traditional conventional firecrackers because of the proliferation of these counterfeit firecrackers. That is why we say in China, for example, United Kingdom, and various parts of the European countries, they've completely banned fireworks in urban areas because of the concerns about the air quality. But India, as I told you right at the start, it is a distinct global precedent. We have set a distinct global precedent where the governmental initiative, there's a government backed initiative of CSIR NERI. It is the only country which has a formal program for developing and certifying these low emission firecrackers. That's where India needs to be praised. But even then, green crackers would not mean that pollution will be completely eliminated. It will only mean clearer but not clean environment. Clearer than what it was previously, but not a clean environment. And for that, we need to take steps, maybe banning the firecrackers altogether, and maybe limiting the scope or the time period within which these firecrackers can be used. But there is something else. Some say that although these green crackers are less polluting, but as I told you, these are not pollution free. Overall emissions are lower because we use less hazardous metals. Barium nitrate, for example, has been eliminated, but that does not mean that other chemicals are not toxic. These are also toxic, but less toxic than we were using previously. And in a city such as Delhi, where the pollution levels are already severe, even if these green crackers lead to 30% reduction in air pollution, because the baseline is already poor. Even this 30% reduction would not make the air safe to breathe. In fact, in 2015, there were three children who went to the Supreme Court through their parents, asked that these firecrackers should be completely banned. Why banned? Because it affects their Article 21, which is right to life. And this right to life does not mean physical act of breathing. The Supreme Court, through its various judgments, have said that right to life does not mean the physical act of breathing alone. It means right to clean environment, pollution-free environment. And throughout the history of the Supreme Court, we have seen the jurisprudence has also evolved. Supreme Court has now said right against adverse effects of climate change is a fundamental right under Article 14 and 21. Supreme Court has said right to life includes right to clean environment, right to pollution free environment. But what impact it will have on another fundamental right, which is Article 19, Clause 1, Clause G, which says every single citizen in this country, you have a fundamental right to practice any trade, any occupation, any profession, any trade in firecrackers as well. Firecracker industry is also a big industry which provides livelihood to a lakhs of individuals. But even this right to carry out any trade, occupation, or profession is not unrestricted fundamental right. It can be restricted in the interests of general public. And that is why there are some advocates who say that the only solution lies in completely banning the firecrackers. But there are also others who say that this is an anti Hindu thing to say. You only talk about environmentalism and environmental concerns when there is a Diwali around the corner. The pollution emitting in the atmosphere because of firecrackers is less as compared to the emissions from the cars, from the two wheelers, from the three wheelers, particularly. The pollution which is caused due to stubble burning when the farmers burn the stubble in Haryana, in Punjab, and Western UP. That causes pollution to a massive degree in Delhi and in this NCR region. So, any solution that we have to frame, that we have to follow, will depend upon how we are able to convince the people that this is not attacking your religion, this is not attacking your religious sensibilities or your right to practice your religion or your features and rituals. But this is to promote public health because right to public health is a fundamental right under Article 20. Clear? Okay. Practice for your mains. Net zero aimed at mitigating climate change is not merely a technical milestone, it represents a societal transformation. Comment. Just like Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, when it was launched, the purpose was not only to eradicate open defecation, it was also aimed at social transformation. It was about changing the behavior of the people because people thought that we will relieve ourselves better in the open than in a claustrophobic toilet. There was also an element of religion involved where people thought that inside our home where we have an idol, we have a murti, we have the god, how can we construct toilet in the same home? So it required behavioral change amongst the people. That is why a mass campaign such as Swachh Bharat, it was successful because it was not only technicality that we just have to eradicate, eliminate open defecation. It was about changing the society, the societal transformation. Similar initiative is required to control the pollution levels in India as well. Let's look at another article. LDF divided over Kerala government's move to seek PM SHRI funds transfer. Education, previously it was under state list in the distribution of powers under 7th schedule of the constitution. But when the constitution was amended in 1976, the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, education was kept under concurrent list. And when it is under concurrent list, that means both the center as well as states, they have the power to make rules, to make laws regarding education. Right or wrong? Right. But now the point is, many schemes have been launched. One you would know, New National Education Policy 2020, where there are some states which are protesting against it, primarily because of its rigid focus on three language formula, that kids should be taught three languages. Although, to be technically correct, three language formula does not mean that one of the languages to be taught to the students in the schools has to be Hindi. No. But the southern states, particularly Kerala, particularly Tamil Nadu, and some other states as well, they are saying that hidden within this three language formula is Hindi imposition. That you want our kids to be taught Hindi, and we are against Hindi. So the issue is about national education policy, the new national education policy of 2020. Then we have another scheme called Samagra Shiksha. Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, the government thought, why do we have compartmentalized programs for different levels of school? We should have one common initiative from the child care till the secondary education, till the 12th standard. And that is how Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan was launched. The intention was that Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, teacher education, all these schemes should be subsumed into one centrally sponsored scheme called Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. And at the same time, the government in 2021 launched PM SHRI, Pradhan Mantri Schools for Rising India, for Raising India. The objective of this PM SHRI was close to 14,500 schools, whether these schools are run by the central government or the state governments or by union territories or by local governments, including Navo Vidyalayas, including Kendra Vidyalayas, we have to transform these schools so that these schools can become model schools. So that the focus should be on playway method. So that the focus should be on how can we make our kids ready for the future. Infrastructure has to be developed, and this infrastructure should be sustainable as well. Solar panels should be used, right? So that these schools are modern, state of the art schools, and these schools can fuel our future generation. It is also a centrally sponsored scheme, which means a part of this money will be funded by the central government, but a part of the cost will have to be borne by the state governments. But state governments are spending money. Central government says we will give you money only if you will sign a memorandum of understanding. And this memorandum of understanding would mean that you will have to implement three language formula. So to upgrade these schools under PM Shri, state governments would have spent the money. For example, Kerala has spent close to 1400 crores in upgrading these schools. Now, this money can be given by central government to Kerala only if Kerala government signs a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Education that we will implement national education policy. That is why Tamil Nadu has also approached the Supreme Court. Kerala also has been approaching the Supreme Court that the central government has withheld these funds, which should have been given to these state governments by the central government, just because we have not signed the memorandum of understanding. But now the Kerala government has decided that we will sign this memorandum of understanding so that these 1400 crore rupees, 1446 crore rupees, which the central government owes to us, they will release it. On this, there has been a controversy in Kerala. The Kerala government is accused of succumbing to the central government and implementing this national education policy, which will mean that Hindi will be taught in Kerala schools. Whether that is right or wrong, we don't have to get into that. We just need to understand what is PM Shri, how is it linked to Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan is a broad initiative, centrally sponsored initiative, which comprises up of one initiative for the entire school duration, right from the child care till the secondary education. Because previously there used to be Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan till the 8th standard. There used to be Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan from 8 to 10. Then there used to be for secondary school education another program, teacher education program. The government decided we will subsume all these schemes together under one umbrella called Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. PM Shri is different. PM Shri is about updating these 14,500 schools and converting them into model schools. For that, whatever money is spent will be given partly by the central government and some cost will be borne by the state governments. But whatever money you have incurred into modernizing these schools, for that, the money can be given to you, reimbursed to you only if you sign a memorandum of understanding wherein you agree that we will implement the national education policy of 2020. Clear? Let's look at an editorial for a new path. Chetan sir already has conducted one super live session talking about the entire Naxalism in India. Maoism was once considered by Dr. Manmohan Singh when he was the Prime Minister as India's gravest internal security threat. This is where this topic becomes relevant for your GS paper 3. What do you think? Is the lack of development leading to extremism in India? Maoism, its core focus was that these tribals and their tribal lands have been confiscated by the rich. The state is supporting the bourgeois. The state is supporting the corporates. The state is supporting the wealthy industrialists and is snatching the lands and the livelihood of the poor. This is where the Maoist ideology comes into the picture. They want to overthrow the government. They want to overthrow the democratically elected government and they want to ensure and implement people's rule. That's their utopia. There was a time when this Maoist insurgency or Naxalism was rampant in different parts of the country. Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Odisha, various places of West Bengal as well. But now, consistently, because of a lot of steps taken by the government, modernization of the security forces as well, involvement of the district authorities, we have reduced these Maoist imprints in India, and now hardly there are 11 districts where you will see the Maoist presence. But that does not mean all these 11 districts are completely dominated by the Maoists. No. Maoists are now restricted to only three districts in Chhattisgarh. More stronger in three districts in Chhattisgarh: Sukma or Narayanpur, Bijapur in Chhattisgarh. Although there is Maoist presence in 11 districts in India, but more popular, more strong, they are only in three districts of Chhattisgarh. We have eliminated Maoism in Maharashtra, in Odisha, in the combined state of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. And this editorial says that now that we are in the last leg of Maoist insurgency in India, because now the government has decided that by 2026 we would have eradicated Maoism, the menace of Maoism in this country. This editorial says a part of this credit should be shared with the security force. A part of this credit should be shared with the district authorities because district authorities, IS officers, they have entered into these tribal districts. They have entered into those areas which previously used to be liberated areas where there was no presence of the state. These were considered to be liberated zones where the state was absent. So these IS officers, these district officials, they constructed schools, they implemented education policies, provided livelihood opportunities to the tribals. And because of that, these tribals started weaning away from the Maoist ideology and they decided to come back to the mainstream. And now we have seen a large number of Maoists, they are laying down arms, they are surrendering as well. And this is possible Because of the security forces, because of the district administration, because of the successive government since the mid 2000s, according to this editorial. Because Maoists, they were misusing, according to this editorial, the emotional angle of the tribals. And then they were indoctrinating the minds of the tribals to believe that only through a violent struggle can we overthrow the state because the state is oppressive and repressive. But when these tribals started seeing the benefits of development initiated through the governments, and they thought that these Maoist leaders are misusing them, luring them into this armed struggle for their own benefit, not for us. This is where they became disillusioned with the Maoist ideology, and that disillusionment helped the government to eradicate Maoism in this. And this is what China also did in China, in those areas. This is what Peru also did. This is what Colombia also did. This is also what Philippines and Malaysia also did, because there was also Maoist uprising in these countries. So through development, through compassion, through state interventions, you can solve the problems. And this editorial says now that the key Maoist leaders have surrendered, peace is possible in this country, but that does not mean we have to neglect the genuine concerns that the tribals and these people have with the Indian state. But through dialogue, through peace, we can resolve all these conflicts because now Maoism is about to come to an end in 2026. Okay, great. The Prime Minister to face Quad BRICS leaders at ASEAN meet next week. Tsunami struck the Indian Ocean in 2004. And then in 2004, there was this tsunami group, tsunami control coordination group of India, Japan, Australia, as well as United States. But in 2007, quadrilateral security was set up involving four countries: India, Japan, Australia, and United States. Although it started as an initiative to ensure that these countries which are affected by the tsunami, they come together for rehabilitation, for the redevelopment. But then it was closely viewed as a group of countries which will counter the rising influence of China. India has forever and ever maintained that this is not a military alliance. We are not going to be part of a military alliance against China. But United States feels that if we have to counter the rising influence of China in this region, for that we need the support of these countries, Japan, Australia, India. In fact, these Quad countries also conduct an exercise called the Malabar exercise, which is a naval exercise. There was a time when Australia decided to come out of this Malabar exercise, but in 2022 or 2020, they decided to join again. So these Quad countries, they also conduct one naval military exercise called Malabar exercise. On the other hand, we have BRICS. Look at the link. BRICS is initially it was Brazil, Russia, India, and China in 2009. Then next year, South Africa also joined and it became BRICS. Now it is known as BRICS Plus. Although Ms. Suhasini Haider here mentions that there are 11 countries which are part of BRICS, for example, with the introduction of Indonesia, UAE, Iran, Ethiopia, Egypt. But it's not a grouping of 11 countries now, it is still 10. Why? Because Saudi Arabia, although it is now included in BRICS, but it has not formally joined BRICS. Why? Because Saudi Arabia does not want to antagonize United States of America. There is a tussle between United States and India right now because of the tariff war, not tariff war, unilateral tariffs imposed by United States on the Indian goods. And United States is coming very closer to Pakistan. 3, 4 times the Field Marshal Asim Munir has met Donald Trump, calling him one of the visionary leaders, whatever that means. The point is, one bone of contention or one concern that United States has with India is, why are you part of BRICS? Because BRICS as an alliance is against United States, according to Donald Trump. Because BRICS countries, now it is known as BRICS Plus, BRICS countries, they want to stop usage of dollar. So if you want to not use dollar, which will affect the dollar as a currency, this is something which is not acceptable to United States. Although this de-dollarization slogan or campaign, it has not come into effect. But there have been some talks that we may use a different currency and not dollar. So the countries, emerging economies, which are part of BRICS, is against the interests of the United States. That is why United States is angry with India as why you are part of the BRICS. That is why perhaps Saudi Arabia is also not formally joining BRICS, because they don't want to antagonize United States. And India is common to both Quad as well as BRICS. And now in 2026, India will take over as the chairperson of the BRICS countries. And now United States President Donald Trump, it has imposed sanctions on BRICS countries, on Iran, on Russia, on us as well. How this will pan out when Prime Minister will face the Quad countries leaders and the BRICS leaders at the ASEAN meet next week, that we will have to wait and watch, because that's going to be of some significance for your examination. So, what is Quad? What is BRICS? When was it created? Who are the members? Who were the last ones to be added? Is it a military alliance or just a strategic alliance? With ASEAN, we have a free trade agreement. All these facts become important for your examination. Let's look at the last article. Thieves steal French crown jewels from the Louvre Museum. This is the museum which is most visited in the entire world. This is the museum where you will see Leonardo da Vinci's iconic Mona Lisa. Mona Lisa's home is Louvre. And this is where the thieves stuck. But two important things that you need to remember, maybe can be relevant for your exam. One is the Winged Victory Monument. This is the Winged Victory Monument, which you will see at this museum. It is considered to be very ancient. Monument dating back to 2nd century BC. You will see head is missing. You will see arms are missing. And this is considered to be a monument of the goddess of victory. Goddess of victory, Nike. So where do you see goddess of a monument celebrating the goddess of victory, Nike, where the arms are missing, the head is missing, and you will see this monument on a boat? This dates back to 2nd century BC, Winged Victory. Second, this museum is home to Mona Lisa. This museum is home to Winged Victory as well. And another important, ancient Greece marble statue. This is made up of marble, and this is known as Venus de Milo. This is to celebrate the goddess of love. Who is the goddess of love? Aphrodite. So, at this Louvre Museum in Paris, which has been stuck by the thieves, which is considered to be the world's most visited museum, it's home to Mona Lisa. It's home to Venus de Milo. It's also home to the Winged Victory Monument. These are the topics that we had to discuss today in the daily newspaper analysis. I'll see you again tomorrow, same time on the same channel. Till then, have a great time. Enjoy the festival. Happy Diwali once again.